Welcome to the Tech Talk, the 7th anniversary edition for the month of October. And what does that mean? The 7th anniversary edition. It means that we are celebrating 7 years this week of the Beam Path, then, now, and what is next. My name is Miranda Joyner, and thank you all for joining us. For those of you that are joining us here live, that have been listening to our antics and seeing the beauty of community and connectivity through what the Beam Path is curating here, but also for those of you that might be joining us through social media or through the YouTube channel, please feel free. I want to encourage you to stay engaged by dropping your questions in the chat or dropping your questions on social media, and we'll try to grab those as we move along with this conversation. Today, we're going to be talking to 3 amazing people. We're switching it up a little bit, going from one person to multiple people on a panel to talk about so many things today. We're going to jump into, of course, AI, of course, the history of Beam Path, and so much more. So I want to get right into it, but I would love to start with a brief introduction for each panelist. And so we're going to start with Dr. Nashlie Sephus, of course, and then we're going to move on down the line. But this is what I would like you to do. I would like you to tell us who you are and what you do. And I would love for you to answer a quick introductory question for me and make it just as brief as possible. I want to know, what is one myth about AI that you wish could retire right now? And I feel like every person that is in AI has something that they hear on a regular basis that they're like, I really wish people would stop saying that or stop believing that or thinking that. And so that's how I would like to open up this panel. And you don't have to think hard, just whatever comes to mind in your spirit.
So, thanks so much for all of y'all being here, Ashley. And we really appreciate all the support that BeamPath has gotten. In my role, even at Amazon as a principal AI evangelist, it's been 2 different worlds going from work to the community. And so we try to bridge that gap as much as possible. We see a lot of folks talking about AI, a lot of them, especially in our communities, in a way that's fearful, in a way that, they feel intimidated by it. And so we want to make sure that they are not, uh, you know, everyone has a right to feel how they want to feel, but we just want to make sure that you also understand the benefits of the technology. When I think about the hammer, using a hammer as a tool, um, you can take somebody's knee out with a hammer, or you can put the nail in the wall and move on and build your house. And so we like to think of AI as the same way, and using it as a tool to perform a task, to help solve a problem. That's how we try to transform the ways of thinking, instead of some of the other ways. But we also try to address the challenges, because just like any other tool, you got its limitations, you got concerns. You have to know how to operate a forklift. You actually need a certification to operate a forklift, but it can be very powerful once you have that and once you know that. And so that's just some of the things off the top of my head.
Very good. And for those of you that don't know, Dr. Nashlie Sephus is the founder and CEO of the Beam Path. Thank you, Dr. Sephus, for your thought about one myth you would like to hear that people would not stop believing about AI. We'll move on to the next panelist, Dr. Amber Avery-Johnson. What is one myth, just one myth about AI that you wish could retire right now, that people would stop thinking?
Okay, so it kind of froze for me. So am I supposed to tell you who I am, or did you already do this?
I did, but you can add anything that I might have
No.
missed.
No, that's good. One myth that I would like to debunk. I think that all jobs will be like AI is going to take all the jobs. I mean, yeah, there are some jobs that can be done more efficiently and um just more efficiently with AI, but taking all the jobs, I don't think that's actually a thing. But I would encourage people to, take this time now to learn about AI. And if you don't know where to start, I say go to the Beam Path, shameless plug, to to learn about AI and get some resources. But yeah, just learn as much as you can. And I think the more that you know, the better you'll be able to use it. And so then you can figure out how, it applies to your life and what you do and, what you want to do in terms of career.
Yeah, I believe that idea is spreading like wildfire, that people are hovering, waiting for AI to come take over what they're doing. So thank you for sharing that. And then last but not least, absolutely, we have Mr. Ivan Walker, software engineer, the startups AWS, and then board member at the Bean Path. What is one myth about AI that you wish we could retire?
Yes, Ivan Walker here. One myth I think is I think people think AI has like sentience, like awareness or conscientiousness, and it's kind of like Dr. Cephus and Dr. Amber stated, like AI doesn't do anything we don't tell it to do or empower it to do, right? And so while you might be on this end of it, like there's someone who's building those models and structuring the algorithm that you're using underneath. And so think of AI, as Dr. Sipa said, as a tool. And I think people are just getting, widespread exposure to it, and they're thinking, oh, it's all the things, and it has potential to be, but it's not. It's someone, whether it's myself or Dr. Amber or Dr. Nashlie, who is guiding the building of these algorithms and the structure and the computing behind it and the cloud that's supporting all of this enablement. And so then to follow up on that, then, you know, we often in any shift in technology have alarmists, but if you're too alarmist, you're just going to get left behind by those who embrace it. So, take the opportunity to be at the forefront and think about how it can help you accelerate your life, think through ideals, and solve problems.
I love that response, Ivan. Thank you for helping me to transition into how we start this conversation. Because when I think about the Bean Path and what it does in the community for those of us that have been connected to it, a lot of it is using AI and technology to strengthen community. And that can look like so many things, which I think makes it hard for people to really grasp, like, are you actually doing over there? But it looks like so much because it can't be put into a box. So I would like to start with this question, and anyone can start with this answer about what inspired the Bean Path. Let's start at the beginning. Where did this idea and name come from, and why did we feel it was important to bring it to Mississippi?
So I'll jump in. So the Bean actually is a computer programming term. It's an old programming language we used to use called Java, and it basically a bean was a smaller piece of code that you can extend and abstract to something bigger. And so bean is also a seed you put in the ground, and I love to garden too. I got a garden channel. But you guys put that in the ground, it could grow into something like a vine, and it takes its own pathway. And so we were using technology to help people find their pathway. And I think um, with that, we were trying to merge two different demographics, those that are highly tech savvy and those that were no tech savvy, and try to find a middle ground for those people to come together and help each other. And so that's how the Bean Path started. We actually started in local libraries, Medgar Evers Library, Eudora Welty, Richard Wright, and Quisenberry Library in Clinton. And we were setting up shop. A few volunteers, Amber Ivan came out as well, and we would just help people with tech questions that they had devices. Grandmamas and Sunday school ladies came in there to get help with their websites and social media, and small businesses would come and ask for help on their tech enabled products, and parents would bring their kids in there, say, hey, I just want them to see a Black engineer or a Black computer scientist. And so that's where we started. We didn't see a lot of people coming at first. We altered how we were marketing and started reaching out to churches and taking advantage of people that were already at the libraries, and it was a win-win for everybody. And I like the story of, after a few months in, we showed up at the Medgar Evers Library one day, and there were a line of people waiting to get in to meet with BeanPath. And so I was like, oh, okay, things are escalating. And so eventually ended up getting a space on the Gallatin Street property campus. And so that's kind of how we started.
I love that. And before I direct this next question to Dr. Amber and Ivan, uh, Dr. Nashlie, I want to know, what did that feel like for you, or what does that mean to you for someone to bring their child into a space and say, I just want my kid to see a Black scientist or engineer? What was that moment like for you?
And it was great because when I grew up, I didn't even know engineering was a thing. I didn't even know what to ask for, until I was exposed to that. And so it made me feel great because I often think I go back to, I was in eighth grade and my science teacher, Miss Powell, sent me to a summer camp in engineering. And I just often think, if some of my peers would have went to that same camp, maybe they would have been engineers too. And, it's a field that's, very um, lucrative, it's ever changing. It's a lot that you can take advantage of, even if you're not even coding. There's so many other aspects of the tech industry that you can take advantage of to bring financial stability and wealth and economic development to your areas, your neighborhoods, your family. And so I often go back to, man, if those other people, maybe the person to my left, my right, they say, when you look to your left and right, the people may be gone. I wanted them there. And so maybe if they were there, we would have had more people doing more things, especially coming from, Jackson. And so Bean Path wanted to be that person. So that made me feel really good that, that's how people would think about it.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Dr. Amber and I know one of you to chime in on this. When we think about the early stages, when she was talking about going into the libraries and the beginning of the Bean Path, what were those first few months like for you all? Were there any memorable or funny moments that stand out to you, or moments that you still carry with you to this day?
I'll jump in. When Dr. Sephus first started the Bing Path, I was not on board. I thought it was too soon. I needed to get settled into Amazon. We had recently done the acquisition, and she was like, "We should do this," and we talked about it, and I'm like, hmm. And so I think there's a valuable lesson there, and I shared it on my Instagram post, and it was like, rich people don't wait to be ready to get started. They get started and prepare as they go. And that's not to say I'm poor. I just had a poverty mindset. Uh, and so, 7 years later, right, like I'm very much engrossed in that mindset of I'm kind of a planner, perfectionist, kind of like just engineered through and through. And I had to really learn, even through the Being Path in this endeavor, to tap into the entrepreneurial aspect, that part of not having engineer mentors growing up that led me to become an engineer despite not really knowing what it was. And so being able to now leverage that. And so in those early days when I was a bit hesitant, I still was like, I'm supporting. And so if you go back to those photos, actually, we used to come from Atlanta every month, Nashlie and I, to the library. And so people thought we lived here. And so we would make a trek every second weekend of the month and set up in the library. And it was just interesting because I think probably more than our peers as Black engineers, we're maybe a bit more resourceful because generally we're the ones who get the call from every family member that think you're tech support, you are work for Apple, you can do it all, in the Black family when you're engineer or computer scientist, because all they know is you do computers and mine don't work. So I think all our career we were being prepped for, like this need and gap in the community. And so I think the breadth of things we covered, someone came in there, I can't get in my computer. I let my cousin borrow. Now I got locked out and it's done. And I was like, hold on, let me see. And I sat there and just casually like working through several people, got his computer unlocked, and he thought, oh, it's locked forever. And I was like, now let me see what I can do, And so it's just like being in that environment. And so for people to not like, we could have just said we do apps or we do this, but we really, through our graduate school studies and undergraduate had this breadth of experience that we're able to lean into. It's like, people say, what do you all do? Well, what do you need? Let's see, And so we didn't feel the need to limit ourselves to one specific domain in technology because the goal was exposure, and then figure it out as we go.
Mm. Thanks for sharing that. I have some follow-up, but Dr. Amber, please give your insight too as well.
Yeah, when I started working with Ivan and Nashlie at the Bean Path, I had just graduated, and Ivan like told me I couldn't do anything before I graduated. So I was actually trying to work with them before Bean Path came about. And Ivan was like, "Nah, you got to finish your degree." And I'm like, so I'm watching them on social media like doing all this stuff, and I'm like, so maybe that was a motivator for graduating. But
Because I
yeah,
didn't finish my PhD, so I had to make sure she did. Plug for
so
the first Black woman to graduate with a PhD in computer science from Purdue, by the way.
Nice.
thanks.
Well, that's worth an applause right there for sure. Congratulations.
Thank you. But yeah, no, I joined, met them at the library, met with some folks. I even remember the first anniversary that was it was at the barn. I think Nashlie had just bought the property. It was like, it basically was like clear everything out so we could have the anniversary. It was like the grass was cut, a bunch of people showed up. It was a really, really good time. So I think when I found out and talked to Nashlie about the Bean Path and she invited me to join, I was just excited to have something like that in Jackson. And really excited to support her and her vision for the Bean Path because, like she said, we're all Jackson kids, all JPS kids, and some kind of way we found our way. We found ourselves kind of in the same spot, like it's being engineers, going into graduate programs, going into corporate America, working in those fields. But she really wanted to create a pipeline for that. And so it's not just by happenstance or, a mentor just found you, but there's actually a place that you can go to and learn about the very people in your neighborhood who are doing these kind of things.
That's good. Now, there was so much there to unpack between both of you. Ivan, I want to go back to what you were saying earlier, just to double down on this idea of just starting. They don't wait till you have everything together to start. And that's so true. I was having the conversation. We had the homegrown graduation last night, the cohort that completed and they had their graduation last night at the Bean Path. And one of the conversations was around that, about waiting for things to be perfect is not what people who scale and grow their businesses do. They move through the messiness of it. They create the models, they get feedback, they make imperfect things, put it out there, test it out, and then get feedback and use that feedback to grow and scale. That mindset is something that our community could use a lot more of, because we often are using this model of, let me get it right before I put it out. So I'm so glad that you shared that.
And I'll just tap on that though. There's a reason, right? And so I would say, as we think about doing that and moving, there's this notion of our community doesn't have as much risk capital as other communities. So there's, validity in being afraid of that. So understanding that is also key to when you're doing that, to say, hey, it's okay to make mistakes and I'm not responsible for the entirety of everyone in my space, when I'm trying to figure this out and stuff. And so oftentimes we feel that burden in our community of representing the whole. And so you might also need to dissociate yourself from that for a bit while you're taking on this new mindset of figuring it out as you go. Then you won't feel the burden of needing to be perfect.
Absolutely. And that's a very valid point, that we do not have as much risk capital as other communities. Absolutely valid. I want to lean into, as we move into this next question, about when you were saying in the beginning, you all were like, well, what do you need? Just come to us. There were office hours. People would come in and whatever their technology needs were, you would meet them where they were, which I think was a beautiful way to start. Since then, I feel like the Bean Path has evolved into so many different components and more established programming and structure. I would love to know, to think about what we're doing now. When we think about, people think about the Bean Path, and maybe somebody listening or watching right now still is not really sure what that looks like. So I would love for any one of you, whether it's Dr. Nashlie or any one of you would like to speak to this, to give a brief description of what are the structured things that the Bean Path offers right now. And then once you give that, I want you to talk about how it has touched so many lives. Like, what have you seen the impact that has happened through these programs in the community?
Yeah, so I'll jump in there. So we've been molding over what our change theory of changes at the Bean Path, and all the experience and the changes and the working with the community, hearing their thoughts, their requests, their desires, surveying vast amounts of people. And what we came up with was we try to bridge the tech gap for people, the most vulnerable populations in our community. And that includes youth, senior citizens, and entrepreneurs. And so our programs that stem across that, and also workforce development too, which is something else that we're about to add as well. Our programs that stem from that, we have our makerspace buildings, our physical space, where we have people coming in, taking all kinds of classes like AI classes, Python. They have Python certification, drone certification, 3D printing, ceramics, sewing. We also have a robotics club for youth. We're also in several schools. We have contracts with several schools for after school programs, summer camps, Jackson State, Tougaloo. We love the youth over here at the Bean Pad. We love the kids. We also have our OATS program, our older adults technical services. The youngest is 65. The oldest was 95 that was ever been in that program. And they're learning everything, how you turn on the computer, to how you use these parking meters downtown, that everybody's talking about. And so it's a lot that goes into how you serve the community. You meet them where they are. I think when we first started Bean Path, I was trying to do all these things that were up on this level, technically, but that just wasn't where the majority of the community was. And so we had to meet the people where they were and keep refining what we were doing. And I think we found a really nice sweet spot. We have basically 1,000 people on average coming in our makerspace a year. And that is up significantly from the times when we first started, 3 years ago in that actual space. We also have our bean barn where we do a lot of other events over there, like our family steam days. We have folks actually renting that space too, which helps with our revenues as a nonprofit. It's a huge space on the whole campus. We got further developments that we're doing too. But as far as, for example, just last night we were packed. Our classes actually max out now. So we're having to figure out to get more funding, to get more instructors, so that we can provide more of those classes for people, even opening up more days. And so that's kind of where we stand right now.
That's good. That's good. What would you say when you think about all these programmings that's happening now? And again, anyone can answer this. Was there a specific person or moment or time that you can remember where you mended someone's relationship with technology and they evolved as a result of a program? Is there like a specific time that stands out to you where you saw someone go from this space to this space when it came to how they use technology, how it changed what they do? Are there any specific stories? I see Dr. Amber laughing. I feel like there's a story
Yeah,
there.
I'll if y'all want to jump in, feel free. We got tons of them, but if you have one you want to point out, feel free. Okay. All right. Well, I'll go on and so we actually had someone ask us this question from Kellogg Foundation. Kellogg, shout out to them, one of our largest major donor foundations in the last 3 years. Um, they were saying, hey, you got any testimonials, any stories? I think Adam sent the email out that morning, and by the next day, he had like 20 responses. It's like, hey, man, this drone class helped me start my photography business, and now I'm, moving up. I'm getting a lot more revenues now. We have folks that bring their kids in who maybe not been interested in tech, and now they're majoring in technical fields. One of our early scholarship recipients, she just graduated from Mississippi State. She's now working over at ERDIC. She's bringing her talents back. She's now a volunteer for our summer camps. And so that pipeline and that cycle just continues. We also have folks that are entrepreneurs coming into our makerspace. We have a guy who he made this device that you could put it on a wall and put, I think it's some sheetrock over it or something, and patches up the hole in the wall. and he was able to print it on a 3D printer as his patent idea. His patent did go through. So he actually got a patent. He was able to build the prototype. And so hopefully they go on to licensing it. But they were just saying, hey, there's nowhere else in Jackson where I can come. Because if I'm not a part of a university, I'm not a part of a community college, and I'm a person in the community, I have another career, but I'm interested in changing my pathway or my career or picking up my side hustle. Where else do you go? And so we're open hands, we're open arms here at the Bean Path, and we try to do it in a safe space that's non-intimidating and people of all ages, shapes, sizes. Just yesterday, was it no Wednesday, we invited three employees from Amazon Web Services. One came from DC, two came from Atlanta. Ivan was there as well, and they were teaching AI and cloud computing to, I think it was some senior citizens in there, it was some kids in there, it was black, white, all kinds of folks. Just interested and say, hey, I hear about this stuff, but I don't know where I can go and get somebody to actually just help me get on the right path. And so, again, the pathways, that's what Bean Path is all about.
That's beautiful. I love that. Getting testimonies, hearing that the work you're doing is impactful, it fuels us. It fuels us to keep going, to know that we're moving in the right direction. So it's always good to hear those things. And when you ask for the feedback, it's great, but it's always good too when people roll up on you and are sharing their excitement for what the work that you're doing, how it's impacting their lives. I want to jump into this conversation around AI. I think a lot of people are really wanting us to dive into your thoughts around how AI is changing and reshaping our landscape in this entire world and country. But I want to remind people that are listening, especially if you're joining us here in the Zoom, we have a good bit of people, almost 30 people are in here in this particular chat here. So I want to encourage you, if you have questions, to go ahead and drop those questions down in the chat. We also have a Q&A button that's right there as well. Drop your questions as we get into this AI discussion. I'll weave your questions into mine, so feel free to do that. But I want to get into what AI is doing right now. There are so many. We went from from devices. It really feels like this happened overnight. I mean, it really came in rather quickly to go from, just having an iPhone and really getting used to the weirdness of what an iPhone can do. And is this button watching me when I'm not, when my phone isn't on, to all of a sudden Chat GPT just seemed to usher in a ton of different AI technologies from, you name it, it's a possibility at this point. So I want to get into anyone who wants to talk about some of the ways that you see AI being used right now to help the community. First, I want to start with the up, and then we can talk about the concerns around AI towards the end. But what are some of the ways that you see every day now that you're the most excited about with AI today?
So I think for me, I'll jump in first. I was just having a conversation about AI last night with a school principal at a lounge randomly. And it came to me, he said, how does AI get the answer so fast? So before I dive into use cases, I'll probably just say maybe a quick overview of what AI is, right? Because then people can think of how it can help on their own, because that's the beauty of it now. You can have just, go from any ideal to some level of execution on your own so quickly. So when we say it came out of nowhere, I think that company that Dr. Amber referenced earlier was an AI company, and Dr. Sephus' PhD is in AI. And there was some level of AI in my dissertation, and Dr. Sephus used to say, "Oh, everybody's graduating with their PhD. They just sprinkle a little AI in it." That was 10 years ago for us, right? And so they say, every overnight success takes 5 years, right, of hard work that people don't see. So, right, we sold an AI company 10 years ago to Amazon. So for us, it's a evolution, but not it's something we kind of were working towards, and so we're happy to see the progress. And so what happened last night though was well, what is AI? And I said, well, let's pause and say, well, what is intelligence before we talk about what's artificial intelligence? And so I usually do this simple thing. I say, point to all the doors for me. And humans are very quick to point to the door. I say, now tell me, how do you know it's a door? And most people get paused right there because they don't think about, well, what is a door? And so then he said, it's something you can escape through. I said, well, then what's a window? And so when you start thinking in terms of a human intelligence and how we make this discernment between a door and a window, which have very similar structures, they're cut out in the wall and you can pass through and you can open and close them. Most humans of a certain age never conflate or confuse a door with a window. So then AI is simply building algorithms to model that human intelligence using computing. And so now when you think about it like that and like, oh, well, what would you ask me? What would you ask Dr. Sephus? What would you ask Dr. Amber? Well, what would you expect our intelligence to do? And then now we're empowering everybody to have access to that level, right? And so that's what you should think of AI as like a kind of a realization of the concept of a personal digital assistant. Like you can go ahead and ask it anything. Yeah, I had AI, downloading some files from me from a website. Although I'm a programmer, I normally would have taken a couple of hours and wrote a script, and I just gave it the website thing, and the agent asked me to log in, and then I handed it back, and you could just see it saying, "I'm trying to figure out, and I'm looking for the download button." And so you can see it reasoning just as I would about how do I download these files, looking at the information that's presented to me. And so I think of it as an empowerment tool for execution, but also learning if you pay attention. It could teach you some bad things because it will often reinforce things that aren't true. But it can teach you a lot of valuable things, right? And so then in that space, I have colleagues, and as we're adopting AI more in the workplace and at Amazon, everybody's on this AI wave, and I hear a lot. It didn't work. It didn't give me what I was looking for. I said, well, think about if I ask you a question in your domain versus asking me a question in my domain, right? So you wouldn't ask me about marketing. And, I probably wouldn't ask you to build an app, Miranda. So, it's like knowing, as Dr. Sheepa said, like what you're looking for from the tool. And then you kind of have to figure out how to frame the question. So I would say, think of AI as a child. And as you would talk to a child back and forth and kind of get responses and educate them and give them more context, then think of AI as a child in terms of human intelligence, and or maybe a teenager that you'll have run to the grocery store for you, probably a better analogy. And so there's so many use cases, and then I defer to Dr. Cephas and Dr. Johnson to pick up there.
I was stuck on you saying it was 10 years ago the child sold the company, and I was trying to figure out how old y'all were. Sorry, I didn't hear anything else you said.
You did make a face of heaven.
You said 10 years ago you saw the company, so anyway.
It was actually 9, but I'm gonna hold on to my
That's
1 year.
Yeah, you claimed that 1 year. Yeah.
That's a third grader. That's a third grader going into fourth grade. All right, but yeah.
1 year absolutely matters, Dr.
So did
Sephus.
y'all invent AI? Did y'all?
They might have. So this is my question. So stemming off of what you said, Ivan, you here. Time videos about people who are losing brain cells because they don't know how to respond to a thing or person without saying this guy here. Do I need to ask him? Do I need to store? It would ask AI that, say, oh, tissue. Would go to AI and ask, and they were having a conversation with each other through the AI or the chats or whatever, GPT tool for you. My question to you is, how much faith do you have in our society to utilize AI in a way that doesn't replace working function talk? I'll tell you what I'm seeing more of, and then I'll, yield to anyone who would like to answer. I'm seeing more of every time I look on social media. in bios. I'm seeing it in marketing material. I'm seeing it on social media. So again, I go back to the question, how much faith do you have in people's ability to be able to utilize it and leverage and still use their own intelligence, or just any thoughts you have around that?
Oh, is that for Ivan or for anyone?
Anyone, you, Dr. Amber, we would love to hear from you.
Oh, no, so I think it's so I hesitate to say this because we heard you won't have a calculator in your pocket everywhere you go. We heard that in school. We heard Wikipedia is not a reference. We heard we couldn't use like what was the one we used when we didn't I mean when you wanted to get notes from a book, oh, Cliff Notes. And yeah, so we heard all these things, but then now we have our phones that are many computers in our pockets readily available when we, need to do some even basic math. So I hesitate to say that like, people are going to use it so much that they aren't going to be able to think for themselves. But as you said, like you see a lot, like you see even like Instagram posts where people use AI to generate it. Or I've heard, from my teacher friends or even in emails, you can tell somebody just simply introducing themselves on LinkedIn and it's AI generated message as opposed to just being like, hey, I see what you're doing. I think we should collaborate. Let's set up a call. It's like a full chat GPT generated message, which is kind of strange. So I do think that it right now it's like at a it's in very high usage, and I think it will eventually level itself out, and hopefully people will continue to think for themselves. But there is definitely a chance that because it can do so much, it's not just like it's what we thought Ask Jeeves was. No, no, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to shoot shots at SG, but it's what we thought it was, where we could just ask any question and get an answer. But that's what ChatGPT or these GPTs actually. That's actually what they do. But yeah,
So
go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna jump in and piggyback off of that, right? So what you really see is when you say that it's not novel to me, right? It's just when you see these advances in technology, it makes it more visible, right? So a lot of things we see on social media that annoy you, well, it depends on which community you were in. You might have already saw it. It's just more at your fingertips. It's more video, right? We say, man, if the things we did in the 90s, right? We're a little scared of that documentary that came out recently. They were like, oh, they're making a documentary, like we didn't have to worry about all this, everything you're doing being permanent memorialized. And so even in this sense, right, I would say this is back to school when you look at somebody else's paper, because maybe you didn't know, you're like, what they got? You had the group of those people who would just copy blindly. And then you have people like myself who made a few enemies because I've been like, I don't know the answer. I just know that that don't look right. And like, how you looking at my paper and go tell me that looks wrong, right? And so it's a macrocosm of that same thing of being willing to call it out and hold accountable, right? I'm like, yeah, I did need a little help, but I just want to let you know I don't think you got it either. So I'm gonna look over this way, right? And so I think we're kind of seeing that same thing, like where there are going to be people, power users and people who are able to get good quality product, but it's based off of your experience. And then you're going to see people who, it took them far past anything they would have been able to do on their own. So they can't really evaluate or quality check it. And right. And so as a society, as Dr. Amber said, there's always this novelty and getting used to new technology. I feel like we're still just really getting used to social media and the flood of information. I remember I switched to iPhone 6 years ago for one reason only. I could control the notifications better than I could on Android, and I've never had social media notifications on because like it just drives me. I'm like, and then so right now your device is controlling you more than enhancing. And so people always say my phone's on do not disturb. I'm like, yes, because I have allocated periods of time where I check. And you call me to try and reach me, I'm not available. That's fine. I'll call you back when I can because we gotten so used to just, and so now you end up in this notification world where everything's fighting for your attention. And it's like, where do you focus it? And so we just have to keep figuring it out as humans. And, we had concerns around being able to remember numbers when we got, the first it was the Rolodexes and then the trios, now the smartphones. But, well, we don't have a need to, but we didn't necessarily lose that capacity. We just use it in a different way.
That's good. That's good. No, thank you for that. So this is a, oh, sorry. Yeah,
I can
absolutely.
add one thing. I'm not sure much people know, but even at Amazon, about 80% of the code we write is written by AI. And that's typical across the board. And also everyone's being required, not an option. It's required that you use AI. We have internal tools, we have external tools. Even if you're in HR, even if you're in finance, even if you're in sales, the expectation is that you are using it, you're able to produce a lot faster than what we used to. And people who are looking to promote you or let you go, they're measuring you by this. And so this is the world that we're in. And so whether you're on the fence or not about at least getting your hands, your feet wet in the technology, I'm just encouraging everybody to do so.
That is, that's great information and a great way to shape what I want to transition into next, to look at how the companies that we look at are using it in the growth and development and even the promotion of the people that work for these organizations. I want to bring it home to where this organization is, the Bean Path, being here in Jackson, Mississippi, and looking at how Mississippi can get a bad rep a lot of times for being behind the curve in a lot of things when it comes to growth and technology, which was a big part of why you were adamant about this organization starting here in Mississippi. Before we jump to Mississippi, I want to use other cities and states as a model. I want to think about this in this perspective. Introducing AI to a space, and then the evolution of how it can change a community to excel and grow. What would you, based on what you see in other cities and communities and how they utilize it, just like what you stated in Amazon, if you could do a bird's eye view about the city and state of Mississippi and the city of Jackson, what would be your thoughts about how we could leverage it? I don't want to talk about the problems around like why we don't and what the pushback is with it. I would love to, if we could dream about if we would do this right, how would it impact Mississippi? How could we do it? And what would be your suggestion about how we go about using AI to excel?
Okay, I'll jump in first, I guess. So first of all, Dr. Sephus and I both gave separate talks earlier this year to the Mississippi School Board Association, kind of around this topic. She introduced the fundamentals of AI, and then I talked about use cases that extended beyond Chat GPT. So that's the first thing. It's like, well, what is AI? It's not just Chat GPT, it's Google Photos. And so one example is 12 years ago, my brother passed, and I was able to go into Google Photos and type his name and find all the pictures of him. So it made it easy for me to put a program together where I didn't feel like I was leaving out any family, and I was able to quickly and carefully curate those images, right, of who he was and the impact and the loving moments. And so, that was 12 years ago, right? And so as Dr. Amber say, the founders of AI on here, but yeah, so you think about that, and it's like, oh, there was a huge burden lifted off of me, not having to worry about if I left a specific family member out, or if you look at the program now, I'm very intentional to be able to see all the pictures I had, and hey, send me more pictures because I can load them into my Google Photos, and it's going to label them by Forrest Walker because the AI is able to look at his face and find all the other images. And so when we think about it like that, you have to say, well, it improves or accelerates. It can improve your quality of life or accelerate your execution, right? And so if you can accelerate your execution, then, well, you might need to spend more time now figuring out what was executed, right? And so I think that goes back to your earlier point of, okay, I can get some output, but how do I validate it? If anybody on this call now can open up Chat GPT, there's an app called Base 44. There's Lovable. There's any number of apps and more coming out every day to help you build apps. We used to have this notion of low code and no code, but now the the AI can just like, you can just start telling it what you want and it'll give you guidance. So one of the things I would say that I do with the AI that helps me is I don't take it at face value. So in all my prompts, I always say, tell me the pros and cons of every decision you're making. So that's how I learn whether this makes sense to me and whether my reasoning is aligned. And sometimes I'm like, no, the AI, you're going off track. Other times I'm like, oh, I'm picking up things much quicker pace than I would have if I had to do a traditional Google search. So first of all, we look at the different use cases of AI. So from, image search and not just LLMs or that Chat GPT fall into, but, backing up your phone and having all your images. And most people don't even know you can go on your iPhone photos and type your name or type someone's name. And the phone already has the AI built in where it's grouping. Like I can type in dog and all the pictures of my dog will pop up or any dog. And so all of that's running in the background. And so it's like using those things to first just improve your quality of life and communication and connection would be the first thing. And then using it for your business goals or vetting out an idea. So take that and then bring that right, like to someone like myself or Dr. Amber and say, hey, I kind of got this prototype right. And so now you're much further along. You can have tangible conversations around what you've already built a proof of concept, right? It used to be like, oh, you have to come to us to figure out how to get a proof of concept. What's the cost? You can start at the end of this call and by 5 p.m. have a proof of concept app out of base 44 and it'll guide you along as well as I would, if not better, right? And so now you can say, well, how do I monetize this or make this enterprise grade?
Yeah, that's good. Anyone else like to speak to that? I have a question in the chat that's similar, but and I'll read the question and you can continue to answer this and maybe weave this in because it's along the same lines. Marcus Collier said, AI has changed the landscape rapidly and continues to do so. How do you see Mississippi positioning itself to become a more valued part of tech engagement or leadership in a way that's resilient to such rapid change?
I'll try to answer this. So Mississippi is ripe for any type. We are essentially starting at ground zero. We want to be valued for our tech talent. We want to be valued for more than just warehouse space. Can you hear me?
I can hear you,
Yeah.
but you
So
are
we
frozen.
want to make sure that we're capitalizing on the fact that people see Mississippi for cheap labor, cheap. Okay, I might need to.
You're unfrozen now.
All right, hopefully that. Okay. So we want to be valued for more than just cheap labor, cheap land for building data centers, warehouses. There's a lot more to Mississippi, and hopefully these companies can leverage that. If we demand more from tech companies, if
Oh, I think she's frozen. Is she frozen for you all too? Okay. Well, while she's
I can
hey.
pick up where she was headed. I think we're not behind in my mind, right? So I think the technology, oftentimes when you see these advancements, even Jeff Bezos just spoke on, like we're in this industrial bubble, an industrial revolution. It was the dot-com boom in the late 90s, early 2000s, and who would, survive. And so I think now with AI and kind of this equalizer that everybody can have an access to a Dr. Sephus or a Dr. Amber or Ivan Walker, just like, this calculator now, in your pocket, then what you really should be asking yourself is, am I utilizing it? And for me, the first thing I do is run an idea through AI. And so me and a colleague were talking about this who works at Boeing, and he was like, oh, I have to write this code. And I was like, ask AI. He was like, but I don't know what to ask it. I said, ask it what to ask it. And he was like, what? And so we went over to my computer and I was like, how do I make a readily available distributable Python package? And it wrote out 10 steps. I said, this looks right to you. I said, it makes sense to me in my area. And he's like, wow. And I said, now, and I just kind of kept building up. And so I think the primary thing when I think about it advancing Mississippi, or even being from a place like Mississippi, is it's such a great opportunity. It's such fertile grounds, right? Innovation is born out of struggle and strife and necessity. And so I say, well, look around you and see what problems do you see, right? That's kind of the foundation of why we started the Beam Path, is to empower this community to solve their own problems. And so while we're looking at workforce development and bringing in more tech companies and not just seeing us as a labor force, but also, to reverse the brain drain that a place like Mississippi sees. Well, I think we're each empowered on our own to do that now as well, and say, what can I build? Like, have I just tried, right? And so what me and my colleague were talking about is it decreases what we call your activation energy. It's so much more energy required to go from a thought rolling over in the bed, and the time it takes you to scroll on Instagram, you could drop that ideal in Chat GPT or Base 44 or Lovable and have an ideal, a dashboard or something that says, something tangible, like you can manifest that so much quicker. And it's like, so what things have you had in your brain that you can manifest, that you can bring out, that you can take to your communities? And then how do we turn that into a business, right? And so while we're, thinking about the workforce and development, we also want to think about the part picks of the world where we started our own company, and what things does Mississippi need, and can you be that solution, especially now with AI to empower you and to reduce the cost, right? There are single person startups that are scaling to millions of dollars now. That was unheard of. There are non-technical founders building apps and prototypes. Like, that was unheard of. And so I think then the message to this audience is, what can you do today to advance yourself using AI? And it could be as simple as just logging into ChatGPT and asking it any question. And oftentimes we project our biases on how we think the technology works. And so one of the things I keep pushing people, don't limit it. It's artificial intelligence. So throw an ideal at it and throw another one and iterate through your solution space, through your ideal space, and see where you land.
Yeah, very good. I see you back, Dr. Nash.
I'll say thank you, Ivan. He captured that nice. That's the gist of what I was saying too. But like you said, it's the playing field is leveled now more than ever. So why not Mississippi?
Mhm. That's good. That's good. Speaking of why not Mississippi, another question from Brandy says, if you could design the ideal AI initiative for Mississippi, one that would have the biggest impact, what would it look like? As we're getting close to the top of the hour here, I would love for you, Dr. Nashlie, to jump in there. I know you got cut off earlier. If you would like to address that, when you think about the Beam Path, because that'll transition me into thinking about where Beam Path could be heading in the future.
Yeah, so definitely focused on upskilling people, workforce development, showing them, like, we're not just saying, hey, you can get more revenues, you can get to a better uh, financial situation, you can see generational wealth for your family with AI. We want to actually show you how you can do it and guide you along the way. Whether you work at Jackson State or you work at McDonald's, you can get into this industry and be a part of it. And there's a lot that we could do right here at home. And so more workforce programs for us, more applications that we can build to help guide people along their career journey and career pathways. Those are some of the things that we're looking at.
Good. Ivan, did you have a quick add to that? I have another question in the chat I want to get to before we get to the top of the hour.
Yeah, I also will say, Dr. Sephus, I can't remember exactly, but I know Mississippi passed the computer science curriculum for high school students, was it? And I think those are kind of things as well, right? So it's not just, AI, but it's who are the builders, who are the Dr. Sephus that are coming along later to understand the biases and the data that the AI has been trained on. Sorry about that. I'm going to go back on mute because apparently a lot's going on.
No, you're good.
I was gonna say, Dr. Amber, have you shared with them about what you're doing at your startup?
No, I haven't. So we are building a career discovery platform for students, and I think this touches on exactly what National Ivan was speaking about. So who are the builders? How do we use this technology to help people figure out what they want to do, or just to help them build their career path? So the name of the platform is called Scholarly, and we haven't gone public with it yet. So we're in the building stages of it. But we did receive an NSF SBIR grant this year, which is a really competitive source of funding to build out this technology. And so I'm hoping to work with the state of Mississippi and school districts to get this platform in the school systems, and do some pilots. So if anybody here is connected with any of the school districts, any counselors, teachers, we love to just kind of pick your brain, talk to you about your pain points and what you think is needed in the school system in terms of helping kids figure out their majors in college or career paths, or whatever that may look like.
Oh, that's beautiful. I love that. That's beautiful. I wanna ask a question about the beam path as we close, and then also Dr. Amber, for sure, if you can, I would love for you to drop however people can contact you with that information down in the chat, so that people will know how to contact you directly before they leave this, if they do have that information. I think that there are probably plenty of people that are connected here, especially with Mississippi being such a small space. We all know somebody somewhere or related to someone somehow. So definitely show people where they can get in touch with you with that information. Um, if someone was wanting to, I want to briefly touch on the business aspect as we're getting close to the top of the hour. If someone was wanting to explore how to use AI in their work or business, what would you quickly tell them if you were in an elevator and had, the 30-second pitch to say, this is what I would do, how I would incorporate this into your business, simple practices you can use for first steps of introducing AI into your space as a business owner? What would that be?
When we talk to businesses, we pitch basically three basic use cases. One is summarization of documents. Another one is comparison of documents. Like, how does this measure up according to this criteria, et cetera. And the third one is data analysis, like going through spreadsheets and finding and automating patterns in large amounts of data. Those three use cases alone will take any business very, very far. Of course, there's many other use cases like creating videos, creating images, and automating, creating content. But those alone, any business owner should be able to leverage.
And see, nobody thinks about that because people go straight to making videos, doing marketing, creating captions. So that is very valuable. Would anyone else like to chime in really briefly on that question? Quick advice you would give to a business owner about how to quickly use AI. What would you suggest to enhance their business?
I think one of the things that probably what Nesha said, like going through different documents would also help finding patterns, but anything that takes away the time from doing the actual work of the business. So if there's any like admin tasks that are monotonous that you can, you're copying over data to a spreadsheet. Now, I'll say this, and Ivan kind of touched on this earlier. These models have something called they hallucinate, which means they make up information. So you can give it factual information and it still can generate things that aren't true. So it's really important that even though you're using them and they're really great, that you check your work like thoroughly. But yeah, I would say that's probably one of the things I would say. Just something that the things that could free up some of their time to get to their innovative ideas and actually executing what they're building.
Very good. So we are at the 1 o'clock mark, but I have two more questions that I want to present. Is that okay that I give you two last questions, one for Dr. Nashlie, and then this last question, just in general about the beam path? And I'll say Dr. Nashlie, but honestly, this question that I'm about to ask from the chat, anyone can answer this question. Any one of you can speak to this. And maybe Dr. Nashlie, you can give final thoughts on the last question because it is specifically about the future of the beam path. So this question from the group says, a lot of times when you walk into big rooms, especially in the tech corporate space, people have their own ideas about what Mississippi and what it represents, How would you show up and represent where you're from, knowing that some people might underestimate you or have the wrong picture of what Mississippi is really like? So essentially, in a nutshell, of course, we know the stereotypes around Mississippi when you walk into the space. How do you combat that as you've learned to be in those spaces and exist in the tech space?
Uh, I guess I'll jump in. Be true to who you are. So much in my early career tried to assimilate, and there is some need of assimilation and understanding professionalism, but then there's a certain part of being organic. And so I have a deep Southern drawl, and I work very hard to talk professional. But then people told me when I got to Georgia Tech, you're just talking faster, Ivan. You sound the exact same. And I was like, oh, I was devastated. I had worked on that accent for like 5 years. It was trash. Took me nowhere. And so then what I learned was, well, I think it was William Faulkner said to understand the world is to understand a place like Mississippi. So I learned to lean into it. And so when people say, oh, Mississippi is this, I'm like, well, Mississippi might be a microcosm or macrocosm of the world's dynamics, right? And so if you really take time and unpack it, right? So people often assume because I have a deep Southern drawl, they associate that with intellect. And you have to challenge them to say, how did you draw that conclusion? What about my accent made you think that I'm inadequate intellectually? And what you'll find out is you have to determine and build a strong identity for yourself, because once you know who you are, then nobody can shake that. And so, for instance, I was in school at Georgia Tech and I said, steel. And my lab mate said, wait, what did you say? I said, steel. And they were like, did you say Still, Steal, or Steel? And I was like, there's only one that fit. And so I was confused. And then I realized and I started challenging and I said, oh, this isn't stupidity from Southerners. We're actually more advanced. I would not have to explain that to any Mississippian. We would use the context clues and deduce what you thought I meant. And so, I was like, yeah, so maybe my tongue's lazy because it didn't need to be. We are in the South and especially Mississippi, a culture that relies heavily on colloquialism and community and African American vernacular. And so when you scale out and you go into other spaces, that's not a drawback. I actually realize that that's a sign of high intelligence that I would have had to explain it to no one I know. Right. And so then to be challenged. And so learning to challenge people of just simply saying, how did you draw that conclusion? What's the foundation of it? Because so many times we start this conversation on the back foot. And I would just say, start rooted in who you are. Yes, I'm from Mississippi and I'm here. So what does that say about you? Like, if you really think Mississippi is the pits and I'm here, then you either have to acknowledge that I am outstanding to get here, or maybe this isn't as much of an anomaly when you see all the Mississippians on this call and you think about all the Mississippians. And people say, you must know every person from Mississippi. Oprah,
Right.
Morgan Freeman. Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. I know, Dr. Amber, you said you had to drop at 2:05. Did you have any final thoughts or anything you want to add to that before you dropped out? Any final thoughts?
Yeah, so I think this was a cool idea to have this panel. I always love to share the stage with Nashlie and Ivan. It's always a good time. Um, even though extra I say that. But yeah, so I'm glad I'm really Nash, I want to say I'm proud of what you continue to do with the Bean Path. I'll be honest with the audience. It's not so doesn't look so great, like the how the sausage is made and just how the blood, sweat, and tears that go into bringing the programs to you all. The ideas just it's a lot of hard work, and I'm sure Nashville has had a lot of sleepless nights, but the Bean Path is still here, still going strong 7 years later, and I look forward to 70 more years of the Bean Path.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate you. And that's a perfect segue to Dr. Nashlie Sephus. I would love for you to share, what do we look to next for the future of Bean Path? What can we expect, and how would you love for us to stay connected and get involved?
So definitely stay tuned for our workforce programs that we have. We recently received a grant that we're trying to expand upon that. You also being a part of our homegrown program for entrepreneurs. So we're looking to scale that. We just had graduation last night, equipping those entrepreneurs with the skills they need and the tech tools that they need to be successful. Definitely check out all of our classes on our website, beanpath.org. follow us on social media at The Bean Path on mostly every social platform. And we also, sign up for our newsletters so you can stay tuned to all the updates. Definitely check us out tomorrow from 10 to 3. This is our thank you to the community. We're going to have fried fish. We're going to have snow cones, a tech fair, lots of entertainment, and just come and say hello. So let us know that you were on the call, and we appreciate y'all.
Very good. Very good. Thank you, Dr. Nashlie Sephus, for all you do. Thank you, Ivan, for your contribution to this conversation, your energy. Tamika is on the chat as well. Tamika Jenkins, the executive director over there, as well as Taryn and the people behind the scenes that helped Dr. Nashlie to bring this this business and this organization to life. There are many, many hands across the space. Thank you all in the chats. Here are some of the comments. Thank you all for staying and engaging. Someone said this was an excellent display of knowledge in the advancement of technology. Thank you all for all you do. Kudos to the panelists and the facilitator. She's on point as well. Thank you. Someone said thank you for, oh, that was Dr. Ivan said, thank you for starting the Bean Path. I love that. And then there's hand claps. Thanks for the Bean Path. We love the community that's there. Great talk, great job. Thank you all. Onwards and upwards. So a lot of love in the chat. We had about 30, I think at one point up to 32 people participating here. And of course, to those of you that are listening and tuning in with us via the social channels, YouTube, Instagram and Facebook. We are excited. We are celebrating. Make sure you join us tomorrow, like Dr. Nashlie said. And don't forget, you can always stay connected by following the Bean Path on social media channels, and make sure that you go to their website, thebeanpath.org, for more information and a list of the different programs and things that they're continuing to offer to the community. We will see you tomorrow at the celebration, and we will join you again next month for the next Tech Talk. Y'all have an amazing weekend. We will see you soon. Come get some fish and snow cones tomorrow. Bring at least 2 friends. That's right, Ivan. Y'all have an amazing weekend.